So why we went to the crowd was basically because we had a need. And for me, I think to summarize our history really is necessity meets opportunity. The need had been identified by Jeff Davis at the Space Life Sciences Directorate at the Johnson Space Center when he had taken a significant reduction in his R&D budget. But the work that he had to do to support human health and spaceflight had not reduced. So how do you do more with less? So he and Elizabeth Richard, who's not pictured here, his chief strategist, but you can see her, developed a deliberate strategy to move the organization toward being more open and collaborative. In 2010, around 2010, Jeff had the opportunity to take a class, an exec ed class at Harvard, and was introduced to Kareem and to this idea of using a public contest as a way to really solve R&D problems. Came back to Houston, excited as heck about what he could do with that. They designed a pilot to really test whether or not a public competition crowdsourcing could help solve very specific, very complex R&D problems. Launched both an internal and external. Can we go to the internal crowd as well as the external crowd? And the results of that pilot were pretty phenomenal, way above what anybody expected. So the answer was, can NASA use crowdsourcing to do more with less? The answer was yes. And in the midst of that, he got the attention of headquarters leadership. And Jason Cruzan at the time, who was the Human Exploration Office chief technologist, was like, okay, what are you guys doing? This is pretty exciting stuff. Jason was steeped in a software development background. He was really interested in figuring out whether or not they'd had success with an algorithm problem as part of the pilot. Jason really wanted to see if they could scale that for full-fledged software development and more complex algorithm development. So in the midst of that, Jason worked with Kareem to arrange a formal contract with Harvard, and that was the genesis of the original Harvard-run NASA tournament lab with Topcoder. While that was happening, Jeff had figured out this worked and was setting up official contracts with Innocentive for both the internal and external platforms run out of the Johnson Space Center, as well as a contract with a technology search company called Yetu.com. So we were having success. We had infrastructure in place. And Jeff and Jason both got the attention of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, who was really trying to look at how do we make the federal government a more open, a more collaborative environment to begin with, and we're also very, very interested in the use of public competitions. So because of the success that Jeff and Jason had had, they were asked if they would stand up a center of excellence. So not only would we try and figure out how to infuse the technique within NASA, we would also do so by helping other federal agencies kind of experiment with the technique as well. So November 2011, COSI was born. 2 years of learning. We learned a lot from the other federal agencies. Jen showed you the CMS counterfactual. We learned a lot from that. We learned some major lessons from our effort with OPM. We learned very seriously what not to do as a result of that one. But we organized with Harvard an opportunity to really share what we had learned after 2 years of true operational experience. And we learned a lot. And it was at this time where we really started recognizing that it wasn't just a question of could we get results. It was a question of what do we do with those results once we get them. So we had proven the technique worked. It was now really time to start thinking about how we put those results into operational reality. So we really started focusing on when we were designing challenges, how are we going to implement it once we get a result? Because we had proven we could get results. So I have to point out that another need that we had, and we recognized very early on, was the importance of truly having empirical evidence that this worked, that this technique worked. So the research that we did in conjunction with, that Harvard did in conjunction with us, was really foundational in helping us establish the processes, the techniques, the way to really adapt the technique to our specific organizational model. So it was truly a combination. Why we went to the crowd, we needed to go to the crowd. We had the opportunity, however, to incorporate into that both academic expertise and research and learning, as well as working with private companies who had the expertise in terms of how to orchestrate and use their particular crowds to help us accomplish and get the results that we wanted to get. Our specific use of crowdsourcing for COSI was acquiring a solution. We were literally buying a solution through the use of a public competition. I wanted to show you this timeline because we are not the only crowdsourcing gig in the NASA community. NASA has used crowdsourcing for a long time, actually started in 2005 with our Centennial Challenges program, which is really kind of, think of it as NASA's version of the X Prize. That really kicked it off for us, and I don't know if that helped somehow in us moving toward using crowdsourcing in multiple ways, but we do use it in multiple ways. And what I've highlighted on the slide here is just kind of our particular journey within the context of NASA and with the context of what was happening within the federal government. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to let him talk more about our current landscape.
This is the opposite. So, thanks, Lynn. This is really, I think the trajectory of how we got here is really important. This is actually our toolkit. So we talk a lot about what do we have at NASA that does crowdsourcing and uses open innovation. And this is it. It's our logo farm. But what this really represents is our NASA Open Innovation Services contract, which is a multi-vendor indefinite deliverable indefinite quantity, or IDIQ contract, which basically means we got all 10 of these vendors onto our contract just by them being able to demonstrate that they had a crowd and they knew how to do challenges. Once they're on that contract, what we do is when we get a challenge in from our projects, we basically put it out for bid and say, tell us how much it's going to cost us, how you're going to run it, how long it's going to take. That's like a 10-page proposal. Pretty short. The whole process takes about 3 or 4 weeks, and it allows us for the vendors to self-select what they do best and then compete on both price and performance. So that's been really successful. We started that in 2015. We will actually do that in 2020 if there's anyone in this room that has a crowd that would like to join. You would, Fed Biz Ops, make sure you subscribe. And then up here we have our internal crowd, NASA at Work, that we started way back in the pilots, and we have built that. Chris Aclini runs that for us. That has been built up to about 20,000 members now. We've run about 130 challenges on that. It's a really great platform. We do find tech search is an important piece. We actually don't run challenges around that crowd. They have a crowd network, and we do that. I just started. How can I have 1 minute? And then one of the things we started looking at was micro purchases, where how can we use our government purchase card instead of a 9-month procurement? Can we actually use this government purchase card, which originally was a $3,000 limit, now up to 10? How can we actually buy things? We actually came across GrabCAD and Freelancer, and all of a sudden our eyes opened to the possibility of doing stuff there. And what's really handy about this is when we talk to our brokers, right? For the people that are coming from our projects, how do we get them to buy off on this? And a lot of times they don't have money sitting around to do a $100,000 challenge, but they do have 5 to 10. So just $5,000 to $10,000 to do a small challenge, it gets the point proven for them, gets the foot in the door. We have done about 300 challenges. We have active over about 320 something challenges, and we're just wrapping up on this. You can kind of see here how those break out. We have technical, problem-solving, innovation solution types, ideations. We have some consulting, algorithm software, CAD modeling and mechanical design, video, graphics, and design. And in that, you can see we don't just use one crowd. We have lots of different crowds, and it really depends on the complexity of the problem, who wins the bid, all sorts of factors that hit in there. This is just some stats, and I'll end up. This is my last slide, so don't worry, Nia. But yeah, this is where we are right now. I like literally took this as a snapshot out of our Salesforce database. 324 challenges total. You can see 37 of those are active right now in some form. And our success rate, and I would say measuring success is a tricky thing. We ask our challenge owners, did we provide any significant value? If we didn't provide any significant value, we note that. Did it incrementally move you forward? Did it significantly move you forward? Or did it outright solve the problem? The nice thing here is these numbers add up to a really high number because anything that moves you forward is success, right? But we do break it down because we want to make sure it's real transparent on what that really means for us. And you can kind of see we break that into our subcategories because an at-work challenge is not the same as one of our noise challenges. Then is it implemented? Has it been used, the solution? Early on, we found that people basically would do throwaway challenges. They wanted to see if this would work, but they wouldn't give you anything that mattered, right? So they'd do a challenge to get this great result, and then they would basically throw it away. Longeron was a great example of that, where we got this really great result, and come to find out there was a large contractor that owned that and didn't want to let go. Cost savings, we're seeing some really interesting things there. Where almost 83% of our challenges have some level of cost savings. I will say it's hard to get cost data and doing that measurement, but we have, for the ones that we've been able to get data for, it's very promising. And with that, I'll finish.